So it seems like as human beings that we are fascinated by rewards. If you look at the popularity of game shows and these reality shows on TV and Netflix and all these other things, people seem like they will do outrageous things for a reward or a prize. It certainly seems that way. And to make it more interesting, there's always, in some of these game shows, contestants have a choice between are they going to take behind what's door number 1 or door number 2 or door number 3. So the point is that people get a prize or reward, and then they can decide if they want to exchange it and try to get something, perhaps they want more or better, but they don't know what's behind the next door, so they have to take a chance. So to me, it's always an agonizing decision for the person to think, okay, do I keep what I have or do I trade it for something else, not knowing what the something else is? Is it better, the same, or something less desirable? So we're talking about rewards. Well, it's interesting that in the gospel today, the Lord also talked about rewards. He was speaking to his disciples, and he said, even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again, but love your enemies, do good, and lend to them, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High. So in other words, Jesus said, if you lend expecting nothing in return, and you love those and do good to those who don't love you back, then your reward will be great. In other words, you'll be in heaven. You'll be part of God's heavenly kingdom. That is the reward. So with that, as Jesus was saying that to his disciples, is it possible that Jesus is trying to bribe us into the kingdom of heaven with the promises of being called sons of the Most High or sons of God? So is it possible that Jesus is trying to bribe us? Well, far from it. The Lord never tried to bribe us, but to challenge us. The Lord tries to challenge us continually, even to this day. So the Lord let us know that in this world, by giving us this challenge, that it would seem that loving our enemies and being merciful and doing good to those, even those who do evil to us, that goodness and virtue didn't pay. Somehow it would seem like that. But knows that that's not true. Because remember that God has all of eternity to repay us. Remember, life does not end in this life, but God has all of the next life. So the Lord let us know that doing good and being merciful and doing good and being virtuous does have a reward. So remember that if every time we did a deed, it was immediately rewarded, well, then virtue and goodness and Christianity would be a racket. Everyone would just do it, just to get an immediate reward. But remember, life does not work that way, and our faith does not work that way either. Okay, so then if Jesus did not want to bribe us, then why did he talk about rewards today? Why did he say that if you do these things, that you will be called sons of the Most High? Well, I believe the Lord said that because he wanted to assure us that life has meaning. That the life that we have today, this day, this hour, has meaning. To remind us, to use scriptural language, to reap what we sow. In other words, how we invest, how we spend our lives, we're eventually going to reap the rewards, the consequences, and the privileges of that. Something else, why does the Lord tell us these things? That if we do these things, we call sons of the Most High? To show that God is in control, and that we're not just in this crazy, out-of-control universe. Yes, it may seem like that, especially those who read a lot of news, I guess, but it may seem like that. But no, remember that God is in control of this world and of this universe. Okay, so then if rewards are part of God's plan of salvation, because this is what the Lord has set up for us, what is our attitude towards the rewards that God has promised us? So think about it. Okay, so God made this promise to us, then what is our attitude when we hear this? That if you love your enemies and do good and lend without expectation of returning, then you'll be called sons of the Most High. Okay, so to me there's three options. And because school is back in session now, I'll give you a little quiz. And it's how do you call it? It's a multiple choice question, only one question. And you have to answer A, B, or C to yourself. Okay. So, and I believe the way you answer this question is a true reflection of your faith. Okay, so the question is, what kind of Christian are you? And this is in regard to how we experience rewards, or our rewards in our Christian life. Okay, so there's one question with three possible answers, and I believe the one that you choose has of the kind of way that you, the kind of Christian that you are. Okay, so the first kind of Christian is a slave. And that's the Orthodox Christian who does the will of God, like follows the 10 Commandments and does what the Lord commanded us to do today, to love your enemy, to do things like feed the poor, visit those in prison, clothe those who are naked, all these things that the Lord tells us in the Scriptures. So the first kind of Christian does the will of God because this person is afraid of not being in the kingdom of heaven. In other words, hell. And so this person is a slave because these people do things out of fear of what the master, what the Lord will do with the last judgment. Okay, so the first type of Christian is the slave who does the will of God. And this is a good thing. Please don't misunderstand. Doing the will of God is always a good thing. So, but the person, the slave type of Christian who does it out of fear of punishment about what this person believes God will do during his life, their lives, or at the end of their lives. Okay, so the second type of Christian is a hireling. Again, these are scriptural terms. This kind of Orthodox Christian works for hire as workers work for pay. It's like when people have jobs, we do a job and we get paid. So when these people, these hirelings, do good, they expect God to reward them. Okay, Lord, if I'm going to do this, then you do that. Almost like a transactional. So these type of people want to be paid for what they do. Paid not maybe monetarily, but in other ways as well. Maybe you know, again, this type of bargain. Lord, if you do this, I'll do this for you if you'll do this for me. Okay? So this is the hireling. So we have the slave, the hireling, and then the third kind of Christian we have is the servant. This is the third and the highest type of Christian, is the one who loves God and loves our fellow human beings as the Lord commanded us to do. Remember the greatest commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your heart, and your neighbor as yourself. Like this is the greatest commandment, the Lord said. The servant is one who does that, and especially loves those who are unlovable or different or awkward or have some kind of disorder, whatever it may be. But loving these people, we're doing good without ever thinking of hell or getting a reward for anything. In other words, they do things out of love, not for any other reason. Okay, so that's the servant in the highest type. So think about which type you are. And perhaps that's what the Lord is challenging with us today. What kind of Christian are you? Are you like the servant? Are you like the hireling? Or are you more like the slave? Okay, so remember though that it's important to really think about this. Because remember in the gospel, in other parts of the gospel message that we didn't hear today, that Jesus said, well done, good and faithful servants. And when he said to that group of people, they were stunned because they didn't know what they had done. But they were the ones who had done the will of the Lord without ever thinking about reward and without thinking about fear of punishment. They did it because they loved the Lord. So in other words, they were the true servants, and they were the ones to whom Jesus said, well done, good and faithful servant. Okay, so then finally, it's our choice. So which type of Christian are you? The one you want? A hireling, a slave, or a servant? And is that the one you want to be? And remember, one of the greatest ways if you want to change from one category to another, especially to move towards the servant, is, when I see the bulletin come out in this blessed community of St. Sophia, there's so many opportunities to serve. Not for a reward, but to continue the Lord's ministry of salvation. In other words, to fulfill the Word of God, the ministry of Christ. So again, there's so many opportunities in this community right here in Winter Haven to progress in our Christian faith. Okay, so finally then, if you are trying to decide which one you should be, remember that to me, that the greatest is the servant, because that's the one to whom Jesus said, well done, good and faithful servant. And remember, if you have any other ideas, remember the Scriptures are full. The New Testament is full of the things that the Lord commands us